Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Ben Britton, VP of Innovation at Agrify. Thank you very much for joining me today, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me, David.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. And if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Ben, I always like to start with a little background. So, how did you get your start in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I've actually been an avid cannabis user myself for a good portion of my life. And I was getting an engineering degree at the University of Colorado. And, years later, I ran into an old friend that was in the cannabis industry doing some growing and some consulting. And he reached out to me. At the time, I was doing more machine design stuff outside of the industry, and reached out to me about creating a rosin press that was specific to the cannabis industry, not something that was repurposed. Everything at the time had been repurposed from T-shirt presses mostly.
No.
To put logos on a T-shirt, which has very similar heat plate sizes, but that's about it.
Yeah. I've heard of the old brewery parts, but I've never heard of the old T-shirt press parts. That's crazy.
Yeah. I would say most cannabis equipment has its roots in something pretty rudimentary and has evolved over time. So, we got to talking about a rosin press, and I built a prototype. And with that prototype, we were getting 6 times the yield that we would with a T-shirt press. So we thought, well, we're onto something here. And I think that there's other people out there that would want this too.
Is that what led to the creation of Peer Pressure?
That is, yeah. It actually started with him more so needing a solution for his operation. And then after we built that, realized, okay, well, we should probably build more of these. So did some 3D renderings actually, and put those images on Instagram. And with those Instagram images, we were able to collect down payment for 10 presses. And so I built those by hand with my partner, Josh, and did the welding, the wiring, you name it. And it all grew from there.
That's incredible. When you were going, to school for engineering, machine design, did you ever think that, your personal passion for cannabis and your profession would ever intersect like that?
I had joked about it, but I don't think that I ever really thought I was going to get lucky enough for that to happen. So it was pretty great.
What was that prototype process like, in terms of stops and starts and, trying to refine the design before you felt comfortable marketing it? Yeah,
great question. It honestly hasn't changed much with what I still do today for product development, but it started with I call it a Frankenstein, which is the ugly proof of concept. Just get it done and see if you can make something work, and then worry about making it pretty and functional, or more functional, I should say, later. And so we still have our first Frankenstein press that I made. It's in our museum here at the shop, and it's pretty ugly, but it worked. And so we started with that. And then after I kind of established the parameters for the product, then I really just decided I needed to concentrate. So I went to a coffee shop, put some headphones on, put a hood over my head, and I spent a couple days just grinding out the 3D for what would turn into the Pikes Peak press.
Man, you must be the first person that was working at a coffee shop that actually yielded a real product.
No, no, I'm sure there's plenty of people that like to do that.
When did you build off of that T-shirt press concept, or did you kind of just scrap it, start over with a napkin sketch, so that way you had everything you wanted?
Yeah. So all the t-shirt presses were pretty much square plates. So looking from the top down, a square plate, heat plate. And I started thinking about the physics of what's happening within the rosin bag, the filter bag when we're pressing, and tried to think about, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And that's the material that's in the dead center of the bag. That oil has to get all the way to the edge. And so I decided, well, I bet I could figure this out with a little bit of math. So I said, and we have some nice images of this online, but if we draw a center line right down the middle of the bag and say that the distance from there to the edge is the maximum distance it has to travel, and we want to minimize that, then we want to actually maximize the perimeter to area ratio. So we want the most perimeter for a given area. And that creates a nice long skinny bag. And so I started by designing the rosin bag that I wanted and then creating a heat plate that matched that size. So the first press we did was 2 inches by 9 inches with a bag with a 2x10 heat plate.
What was it like the first time that thing ran and you saw that, what you said, like 6x yield improvement?
I mean, it was pretty awesome. I was expecting maybe at most double. So to see numbers like that and then to be able to repeat it was pretty awesome. It validated the math that I had already done and really kind of kicked things off. So from there, it was, okay, how much pressure do we actually need to extract the oil? And what happens if we put way too much pressure? Do we just get a bunch of undesirables? Yes, we do. So then it was doing a lot of experimentation to figure out how much pressure we actually need so that we weren't overbuilding something, and try to keep it at a reasonable price with the most functionality for the user. So from there, we sized our cylinders and went with the pneumatic route, which still stuck with the pneumatic route. I think it's a great option. It gives you a huge level of control, and it also is really nice because you don't have the possibility of a hydraulic oil spill or leak in the facility, which can ruin a lot of material. And you get quite a bit of force resolution. So you can increment your force with really fine increments with pneumatics. So went with pneumatic, and yeah, I guess the rest kind of evolved from there.
When was Pure Pressure founded?
End of 2015.
2015. Okay. So what was the evolution of the company like leading up to when you were acquired by Agrify?
Yeah, so we started with this one pneumatic rosin press, and then and some rosin bags, and then over time we added another press, the Longs Peak, which was a bigger heat plate, bigger cylinder, just for more capacity. And then we went the other direction, and we went down in size and made the Helix models for the user that didn't need as much volume throughput and could do it by hand. So there's no air compressor needed. That's just a screw press. And that's actually my favorite press. It's really, really nice to use. From there, we started dabbling in ice water extraction and came out with the Bruteless system, which was, instead of getting out a brute trash can, a plastic trash can, and doing ice water extraction in that, we thought there's a cleaner, better way to do this. So we created stainless steel vessels and insulated them, welded them with sanitary fittings, and made a really nice environment for ice water hash that's easy to clean and easy to repeat. So started getting into that, and that was all hand washing. And then we decided that we needed to automate that process. So we came out with the Axis trichome separator, and that is our method of ice water extraction in an automated fashion. And the Axis is pretty unique because it mimics hand paddling, but in an automated manner. So we're actually able to get 6-star hash and amazing throughput all while doing it in an automated way. So it's very different than what our competitors are doing.
Why was the screw press your favorite?
So the screw press is my favorite for a couple of reasons, but functionally it's quite a bit different, because with a pneumatic press, you've got a piston. And so you're applying a constant force. That air is applying a constant force and a constant pressure on the material. So what's happening is within that rosin bag, you've got material that you're trying to express the oil from. And as that oil comes out of the bag is shrinking in size. And so constant force keeps pushing down and expressing that oil at a constant rate. With the screw press, it's a positional force application. So when you twist the screw, the plate moves a certain amount. But if oil comes back out and that bag thins up, the force goes down. So we actually integrated a load cell, which is a force measurement sensor, in line with the press. And when you turn the handle, you can watch the force go up. And then if you don't turn it and oil's coming out, it'll drop back down. And so what we can see is when we're finished expressing oil, when we've actually completed extraction, that force will go up and then it'll plateau. And so we can actually do endpoint detection. We can determine when we've finished extracting oil from the plant. And we can't do that with a pneumatic press. We can only do it with a positional force application in tandem with force measurement. So it's a really cool technology that also, when you're turning that handle, it's really easy to turn, but you can feel the resistance of the hash. And so you feel much more connected to the process. And, it's easier to prevent overpressing or blowing out a bag, because you kind of feel that connection. Whereas with pneumatics, if you just turn up the air pressure too fast, you could blow out a bag.
How did the acquisition come about with Agrify?
Yeah, so they actually approached us. We just kind of had our head down and we're grinding away and just trying to do our thing, and be the best at solventless and provide the best tools for our customers. And Agrify came to us at last MJ Biz and did a little bit of secret shopping, and then we started conversations after that. So we found that we thought it would be a great fit for what their plans were and what our plans were, and thought it was a great opportunity for us to step up and make the next move.
So the acquisition happened late last year. How have things changed at Pure Pressure after the acquisition, and possibly improved?
Yeah, things have changed, but more or less in managerial senses. But we're still doing the same thing. We've got the same people in product development, and we're coming out with new and great products each year. So what we were looking for was more resources and the ability to kind of take Pure Pressure to the next step, and also take it internationally. And I think that's where you're going to see a big push as well.
In your opinion, what is the state of the cannabis extraction industry?
Yeah, so we're in a bit of a weird place right now. I don't think it's really that surprising. I think it's just a result of a number of things, but it's really a result of where we are from having the United States be kind of a pioneer industry, leading the way, but doing it in a unique way, not taking the federal route right off the bat like Canada did. So the United States, we're chipping away at these states, and of course, early on, there's a clean slate. Every state is an opportunity, and with the first few that come on, you've got businesses that thrive and they're figuring it out, and then as more and more states come on, the successful players from one state want to hop that border and start playing in another state, and that's called an MSO, a multi-state operator. And so then you've got COVID that comes in at a really strange time. And if you look at the cannabis usage statistics over the last 6 or 7 years, it's a very constant line with a big bubble during COVID where the consumption increased above the average growing rate. And so you've got an increase in consumption while we've got legalization happening. And we had a little bit of a bubble, a bit of an overexpansion, in my opinion, more supply than the demand could satisfy later on once that bubble popped. And so now we're seeing a bit of consolidation as some of these players that aren't able to survive are dying off or consolidating, and MSOs that are being successful spreading into other states. And then we've got a little bit of a lull in legislation, and all the while internationals picking up and heating up, but not quite quickly. So it's going to be a few years before that's really happening. So I think we're just in a growth and transitional phase here, but maybe to be expected if we kind of looked at all of the signs.
What were some of those signs that we should have been looking at?
Well, I guess it's always easier in hindsight looking back, but anytime there's a huge abnormal growth in consumption, it's probably not going to sustain itself. These rates have been going for some years now, and it's just the way that people operate. So, if it seems too good to be true, maybe it is, but that's not to say that cannabis is dead, or by any means. It's not even close to that. Really what it is it's just trying to figure itself out a little bit. And I think that as time goes on, we'll see natural progression of the market.
Given your expertise, what are some of the latest developments in solventless technology that you've found particularly exciting?
Yeah, so, it's interesting because solventless, one of the reasons I was interested in getting into it in the first place was, particularly rosin, was that I thought of it as one of the simplest forms of extraction possible. Heat and pressure. We're squeezing the juice out of something. We do that with a lot of different things, and especially food products. And so I look at solventless extraction as kind of a clean and simple method of extraction. And for that very reason, I think it'll always have a home. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is we're starting to see, because people can associate with solventless brands, or there's a lot of health crazes out there right now, eating organic and eating clean food, making sure that you're not consuming toxins or chemicals. So solventless fits the needs of those trends as well. And so, we're seeing a huge growth in that segment of the market. And I think that's to be expected, and that will always be the case, because an educated customer, whether they, I should say moderately educated customer, but, if somebody says to you, you can have these two products, this one was made with chemicals, but they were removed, and this one was made organically, which one would you choose? You're typically going to choose the organic one. If you don't know the difference, is it actually better? Not necessarily. Does the one that was made with solvents have solvents in it? Not necessarily. It could. So there's just always going to be this customer that kind of takes that tendency. And so I think what's interesting is we're starting to see a lot of technologies branding themselves as solventless that aren't. And then we're seeing new technologies come out, like there's different microwave technologies for extraction, and we've seen steam terpene extraction, and a lot of things where we're trying to get to the same result, but without introducing some of these chemicals, some of the hydrocarbons. And so I I think that as time goes on, we're going to see a huge shift in solventless, especially in bulk extraction of solventless. I think that the name of the game is collecting trichomes, and that's what ice water extraction is all about. So if you go talk to a grower that sells or extracts their flower or sells their flower for extraction, they're growing resin glands. They're not growing buds. They're not growing fan leaves or anything like that. They're zooming way into the microscopic level, and they're growing resin glands. That's the true fruit of the cannabis plant. That's what we're after. And so as we perfect the growing, and I think it's a pretty obvious stark difference we have between cannabis and CBD, THC flower and CBD flower. The resin glands on CBD are way smaller, and they look underdeveloped compared to some of these huge bulbous resin glands that we can grow on cannabis. And that's because, whether we've been thinking about it or not, we've been preferentially selecting and breeding plants that grow bigger resin glands for cannabis, because people have been wanting to get higher. They've wanted to get stronger weed, whatever it is, for decades and decades. And that has shown itself, but it's not until recently that CBD and hemp is being harvested for those resin glands. And so that whole half of the industry, in my opinion, is just so far behind, and there's just so much that the plant has to do in catching up for it to be a viable candidate in solventless extraction.
When you see competitors or other companies that are out there in the market marketing themselves as solventless, but it's not true solventless, does that perturb you? Do you think that they're kind of being dishonest when it comes to the industry?
I think they're playing the game. I don't know that it bothers me. I think that there's always going to be some level of this. It's our job to educate the customer. And so I think that as time goes on, and we see this in each market, as the market develops, that the customer becomes more educated and they start to shop for specific things. And so maybe those tricks work for the first months or a year, but in the long run, people aren't stupid and they end up finding products that work for them.
Is solventless something that is, is it more something that's adopted earlier by craft operators, or do you see all different sizes of companies kind of attracted towards it these days?
So back in the day, it was all the craft guys that were adopting it. And it's because, in all fairness, the equipment back then didn't allow an operator to process very efficiently. It was a lot of work, and it was backbreaking work, and it was lifting a lot of heavy things and shaking things, and just it's not fun. So I think a lot of the ice water extractors that have moved on and gone automated, and will probably are very happy about that and don't look back. So I think I'm sorry, what was the question? I think I lost track there.
So whether or not it's more suited to craft operators, but it sounds like as the technology has come along, maybe it's been more suitable to larger operators.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. As we've perfected the technology, it's definitely that the mindset has shifted, that this isn't just craft, that we can do this commercially, because we can process just as much as a BHO system can in a day. And what people are realizing is that the startup costs are a lot lower with solventless. So when you don't have to build a C1D1 or a C1D2 environment, which is those explosion-proof rooms where you operate these solvent extractors, you can save a lot of money, and it can save you a lot of time in getting your license to get open. So there is a give and take, though, because Solvent extraction doesn't care what those resin glands look like. They can be ugly, they can be great. It's going to break them down, pull the oil out, and then you can separate it. So you will get a full extraction if you operate the machine properly. Now, solventless extraction is more particular. And so the plant has to cooperate with the type of extraction because we're physically trying to separate these items from each other and then using standard filtration methods to collect them and separate them. So we are at a bit of a mercy of the plant and how it's grown with solventless. So, I don't like to give false advertising and say that it's better in every regard. I think that the best labs utilize both extraction technologies because the reality is you're going to have an influx of material that varies all the time. And you should absolutely take advantage of the fact that you can make more money processing the right material with solventless and then processing the right material with solvent. So knowing when and where to use the right tool is really how to be a successful operator.
In the simplest of terms, when is solventless the right tool?
When the plant extracts well. So
Okay.
if seriously, it's that simple. If it works, you should use it because those products beg a higher price point in the dispensary. So if you can sell a vaporizer cartridge for $50 made with solvents or solventless, and then you can only sell a solvent vape pen for maybe 35, then you can see the big difference here. And so the money's on the table. And if the plant allows it, take advantage of it.
How does solventless technology fit into Agrify's business model of sort of modularly working with operators to scale up their business?
Yeah, so solventless it's a great starting point for people, and it's really going to be a good push internationally because in new markets, you've got people they've got a lot of money they have to spend and they're cautious. And so do they want to spend millions of dollars and take a huge risk? Not always. Some people do, but a lot of people would much prefer to get their foot in the door and get things rolling. And so we'll start them with a solventless operation due to the capital.
When you're setting up a solventless operation, what does that look like for the operator?
Yeah. So typically, if we're going to do ice water extraction and into rosin pressing, you're looking at storage, number one. So you got to have a cold place to store both your raw material and your processed material. So we're talking about freezers or a walk-in. And then we're going to have an extraction room where we're doing ice water extraction. Typically that can be a chilled environment. It doesn't have to be, but it's nice if it is air conditioned at least. And then we'll go from there, we're going into the freeze dryer and then into the rosin press. Both of those items can be in just a standard room. And then we're looking at packaging and taking our final product and packaging it up into whatever it is for the dispensary. So those are kind of your main phases. And we've got a team that can draw this up for your facility. We've also got standard layouts. We've fit entire labs in spaces as small as 500 square feet, and we've gone up to tens of thousands. So it's really kind of whatever the customer needs and what their market is looking for.
So a lot of times when setting up these labs, I hear that people should set up for what they need, but kind of build according to a 3-phase plan. With solventless technology, is it fairly simple to scale up as demand calls for it?
Yeah, we've made it that way with our equipment. We've tried to. So for example, with the Axis, we separated the agitation from the vessel. So our Axis you can just pull one vessel, and if they're all on wheels, you can roll it out and roll another one in. So that machine, you could run one batch, or you could have 4 batches running at once, and you can keep churning them through. You could have a huge production run at the same time as an R&D run. And then with our rosin presses, when you're running the pneumatic ones, you can easily have an operator run 3 of those at once. So you can start with one, keep adding presses, and it scales really nicely.
Over your 7 years in the business, it says that you've worked with something like 7,000 different customers. What are some of the stories that you remember from working with these individual customers, or some of your war stories from being on the road?
Yeah. I mean, do you want good ones or bad ones? Both?
Yeah. A mix of both.
Okay. Well, I think for me, what I didn't expect, I got into this thinking it would be a fun thing to do, and it was. But what I didn't expect was that I was going to help so many people start a business that then, fed their friends and families, just like peer pressure did. And so it was really cool to see our products and actually get and our logos and our names and stuff get integrated into other people's business names and logos and business models. And so to be that integral in somebody's business, that they took our press and put it in their logo, their company logo, was really cool. I would say, of course, on the other side of the coin, I've been sued, so who hasn't?
What did you get sued for?
Oh, well, I didn't actually get sued, but everybody gets threatened to get.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion, one of the ways that you welcome yourself to the cannabis industry is once you get sued, you know that you've been in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other way is they shut down your banking. Did they go after you for that too?
Oh, we could talk about that too. Definitely lost banking. Got a bunch of letters, in the mail saying, okay, all your bank accounts are going to close, and we were doing everything by the book. So, but it wasn't to their liking. So there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way that cannabis is. It's been a wild ride and definitely feels a little cowboy at times, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Do you think, as the industry has evolved, some of that cowboy has gone along the wayside? Do you kind of miss that, or is there still enough of it there to keep you interested?
It has gone by the wayside, but honestly, part of that was that can be difficult too, because, you've got, I would say when the cannabis industry was at its all-time high and things were booming, you're also getting so many customers that don't know what they're doing, and you can see that they're making critical mistakes. And so trying to slow people down and let the right process happen can be really challenging, because people are like, no, I want to do this and I want to do it right now.
When you tell people to slow down, I mean, I assume you get a lot of pushback, but I mean, they have to rely on your expertise at some point to be like, hey, listen, I've done this 7,000 times. I know what I'm doing.
You would think so. I would say some people listen, others, they just kind of have a vision and they're going to go for it. And I respect that. I did the same thing. But just be aware of your surroundings and take in as much knowledge as you can. And then of course, make an educated decision from there.
So as you've worked with so many people in the industry, in your opinion, who's doing it the best?
That's a great question. That is a great question. So, I don't know that anybody's doing it the best. I think that a lot of people are doing the best with what they've got, but I think that we're so young and so much in the infancy of cannabis that I think everybody's still just in the phase of we're figuring it out as we go. And so I think the people, and I'll say it in a more broad sense, that the customers and the businesses that are the most successful are the ones that are not rigid in their ways. They're flexible and willing to pivot with the market, and they're constantly looking at what their customers want. It drives me nuts when we have people, and this happens all the time, that come to us saying, I want to do a business that sells this because it's what I want to do. Well, if that's great, if that's what you want to do, as long as you're okay with not making any money, because you have to listen to your customer. You don't get to tell them what they're going to spend their money on. You provide what they want. And so I think that a lot of times people kind of get an idea of like, I'm going to do this and that's it, and we're going to stick to this plan and we're never going to deviate from it. And those are the people that struggle very, very much. So opening yourself up and being flexible and rolling with the punches is the best way to go.
What is your approach to R&D? What are you working on now? What are the problems that are currently exist that you're looking to solve? And when might we see something else hit the market?
Yeah, so now it's great. We've got a lot of new engineers that we're working in these other extraction companies, and we've all come together to create one R&D group. So it's great. We've got a lot of awesome minds working on different projects. R&D process for me hasn't really changed. It's really all about listening to the customer and, like I said, creating things that they need. So we're all about finding pain points that the customer has and then making a solution that answers that pain point. And as long as we are continuing to do that, these pain points, they're going to evolve, and we need to evolve as well.
What are some of those pain points that you're hearing about most right now?
So within solventless extraction, I would say with, there's a lot of space constraints. People, unfortunately, because a lot of licensing is difficult and slow, it's not easy to just change buildings. You build a business in a location and then you're like, shit, I need more room. And so this goes back to what we were just talking about, which is planning ahead. And so having these conversations with companies like Agrify and building a relationship and understanding what you need now and what you're going to need in the future, so that you don't drop a couple $1 million and sign a lease and then 12 months in, you're like, I'm completely out of room. So that happens all too often. And funny enough, we get approached an enormous amount of times with somebody that has a building, but no license and no business plan.
Oh,
it's a completely backwards approach. Like, how do you know what you're going to need to put in there, what you're going to do? If you don't have a business plan, you don't have anything like that, but you've already got the space. So, and a lot of times it's like, okay, we've got 800 square feet, or we've got like 80,000 square feet. So it's way too little or way too big. And so, just slow down, take one step at a time. Let's talk it through. Let's learn what you want to do, what your market's ready for, and let's create a business plan together.
Is that friend that you designed your first machine for still in the cannabis industry?
He still works for Agrify.
Oh, really? Oh, man. Everyone's together at the end.
Yep. His name is Josh Rutherford. He's also owner of a lab, Cushmasters, here in Colorado, which was another great resource. So he was essentially our customer as we were building this extraction business. So, he's going through all of the pain points, and I'm able to spend my time solving those pain points.
That's one of the things that I've seen consistently with equipment manufacturers is they have a relationship like that to get that constant feedback as you're going through that R&D process.
Yeah, you have to. It's how you do it in any other industry. And so as soon as we jump to cannabis and we involve legalities of testing and acquiring material, sure, it makes it more difficult, but it doesn't change the necessity for that part of the R&D process, right?
I know that you got to get out of here soon. before we do, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself, Pure Pressure, Agrify?
I would just say stay tuned. We've got some really cool developments coming out, especially in the consumables area for Pure Pressure. So we've got a lot of really neat things that we've been spending a lot of time R&D.
That's awesome. I mean, hey, once those are ready, please reach out. We'd certainly love to share that with our audience.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's really interesting to hear from one of the pioneers of solventless extraction.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Excellent. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you listen to us on. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, for Ben Britton, VP of Innovation at Agrify, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.